Hello and welcome everyone to our sharing session in Hall B, where we're going to discuss some of the experience from the Asian countries, tobacco harm reduction from Asian countries. And we have a few panelists in our session today. We're going to start with Prof. Rajesh Sharan. And after that, we're going to go to Dr. Lorenzo from the Philippines. Maybe Prof. Rajesh, you can start presentation.
Thank you so much, Professor Puteh, distinguished chair of this session, my acclaimed fellow panelists, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all from India. But before I begin, I must put on record my sincere thanks to the organizers for inviting me to this important session on THR in Asia and share my views. My special thanks to the chair and fellow panelists for accommodating my request of advancing my talk here as it is. So that tobacco is a burning topic today is evident from several facts and figures as I show here. For instance, the lopsided global divide of tobacco between high-income countries, HICs, and LMICs is glaring. Of the global 1.3 billion smokers, over 1 billion smokers live in Asian countries. So that's about 80%. Of 8 million smokers who die, unfortunately, every year globally, almost 80% of them live in Asian countries. So it's a huge divide that we see on tobacco. And the projection for 2030 is very dismal, where the burden of death in LMICs is projected to be 4 times higher than the high income group countries. So it is alarming. Now, coming to the Asian continent, which is the main topic for which we are meeting in this session, the situation is as bad. In fact, the more of LMICs is shared by Asian countries. All indications show that tobacco smoking epidemic has worsened in Asia in past few decades. A recent publication from JAMA Open in 2019, just before pandemic, has a huge indicator for this. It is a very large study spanning over several decades and covering more than 100,000 people. This study shows that Asia has consistently recorded increase in smoking attributable death through successive birth cohorts. And this is alarming, calls for immediate urgent attention. Now, unfortunately, Asian country houses the two most populous countries, China and India, and some most tobacco burdened countries, which includes China, India, Indonesia, among other Asian countries. And you can see huge tobacco consumption patterns in these countries shown here. And the burden is very, very high. Sadly, however, in all these countries, a lot of Asian countries primarily, the governments have financial stakes in tobacco and related industries, some up to 100%. Then it becomes very obvious why tobacco control is failing in these Asian continent. Look at the red, intense red map, the Asian countries showing high intensity red, and some East European country. But the rest of the world has not so high intensity of the burden of tobacco, indicating that there is an inherent conflict of interest of the governments who do not push really with intent to reduce tobacco harm upon their own men and women. And of course, in all that, the saddest part is that all those who smoke, almost 50% of them are going to die prematurely. So it is an alarming situation. it becomes even worse when we divide the globe in combustible tobacco burden and smokeless tobacco burden. You can see combustible tobacco burden is primarily um, kind of located in the high income countries. So Europe, Americas, North and South America, Australia, China. And the smokeless tobacco burden is primarily located in Asia, some East European countries, Africa. So the LMICs and Asia included, and as you can see, India has the highest burden. So there is a huge tobacco divide globally. So what is the status of THR, the topic that we are covering today in my country? Coming to this point, I would say that it is dismal to say the least. There are multiple issues plaguing bad tobacco harm reduction outcome in my country. First and foremost, one of our studies that we published a year before finds that high nicotine misconception and illiteracy exists even among the medical healthcare professionals. I have personally interacted as a biochemist with these medical doctors, and I was aghast to see that they don't know so little and so wrong about nicotine, where a large, almost 70%, over 70% clinicians believe that nicotine is carcinogen. So that's one problem. These clinicians also lack both training and time to offer tobacco cessation services to their patient so that they can handhold the patient's journey to complete cessation. A good number of them themselves use tobacco in one or the other form, so they are kind of demotivated to do that. So I mean, there are multiple reasons that, and one of those primary ones are there, but unfortunately, I think it is also prevalent in other parts of the country. In India, THR for smokeless tobacco forms, which are abundant, and 200 million SLT users are in my country as per the records. There is no nicotine replacement therapy or NRT available for virtually no tangible NRT options available for them in my country. And ironically, they are never available in corner shops where you can buy all these very conveniently at a very cheap price. In India, smoking is a second problem because we have only relatively small number, only 100 million smokers in the country and about 30 million dual users. Smokers have some options of NRTs, but they are so expensive in comparison to the smoking options that they have, that they are naturally not motivated to use these NRTs, and clinicians don't help them so much. We have only 19 tobacco cessation centers in this country burdened with over 300 million tobacco users. So you can imagine that it's very, very poor. Unfortunately, 2 years back, government also banned all reduced harm products such as N's, e-cigarette, HNBs, etc. from the country. And so, the tobacco users, particularly smokers, have even that option gone. So to sum it up, I would say that tobacco control in India and tobacco harm reduction status is very, very poor. The implementation of FCTC is poorest of poor. There is a huge policy practice gap. And due to all that, tobacco control in India remains poor. And we need to do something in order to overcome that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof. Rajesh. I think that the time is up for you as well. 10 minutes. You have managed to keep it to 10 minutes, and I don't see any question at the moment in my chat. So I think if it's all right with the chairperson, with the panelists as well, we can allow Prof. Rajesh to leave the session. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate cooperation. Bye-bye and all the very best. for this
All right, thank
session.
you. Take care, take care. So may I invite Dr. Lorenzo? Dr. Lorenzo, if you have any slides that you want to share, or
Yeah.
if you are not sharing any slides as well, please go ahead.
Okay, good day everyone and to all our viewers from all over the world. First and foremost, I'm grateful for having been invited to participate in this fourth scientific summit on tobacco harm reduction. I commend this much awaited event for the laudable effort to bring to the fore the real narrative and science about tobacco harm reduction. Before I proceed, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Lorenzo Mata, a concierge medical doctor and a general practitioner who does house calls, catering to approximately 90,000 people around a certain part of the beautiful scenic highlands of Antipolo City, Philippines, where I live. I'm also the president of Quit for Good. Today, I shall talk about tobacco harm reduction in the context of the Philippines, my home country. But before I proceed, let me give you a brief background about my organization. Fit for Good is an advocacy group composed of concerned citizens who recognize the profound damage and loss tobacco has brought to society. We in Quit for Good advocate real, practical, and tangible solutions that seek to eliminate once and for all the world's leading cause of preventable death and diseases, the combustible tobacco. We also advocate smoking cessation through consumer education on alternatives to smoking and fair regulation, and that strives to build a coalition and a neutral space in pursuit of the same. I have been very visible in different public fora through our Quit for Good podcasts. I attend legislative hearings as resource speaker and participate in media interviews explaining the benefits of vaping to smokers and why these products are necessary as a considerably less harmful alternative for them. In addition to this, we also submit position papers to the government where we raise issues from the perspective of the 17 million Filipino smokers we are trying to help and push for a differentiated, balanced, and consumer-centric approach to regulating smoke-free products. In line with our efforts and advocacies, we have been strong believers of the concept of tobacco harm reduction. Harm reduction as a general idea is defined by the global 2021 Global State of Tobacco Harm Reduction report as a range of pragmatic policies, regulations, and actions which either reduce health risks by providing safer forms of products or substances or encourage less risky behaviors. According to the report, tobacco harm reduction or using safer nicotine products offers new choices to millions of people worldwide who want to switch away from smoking or other dangerous forms of tobacco use, but have been unable to with the options previously available. Now, why is tobacco harm reduction relevant to the Philippines? Here are the statistics. According to the 2015 Global Adult Tobacco Survey, there are almost 17 million smokers in the country. The same survey showed that while some 76.7% of current smokers plan to or thought about quitting, only 4% of those who smoked in the past 12 months successfully quit in 2015. That's a measly quit rate which largely remained unchanged from 2019. Lastly, the 2019 Global Burden of Disease report from the University of Washington revealed that a shocking rate of more than 117 million Filipinos die each year due to tobacco smoking. Uh, in as much as we want all smokers to quit, in reality, not everyone would want to quit. We in Quit for Good put forward that the traditional quit or die approach to public health must be abandoned immediately. A third option must be available to our adult smokers who do not wish to quit. Tobacco harm reduction through the use of promotion of safer alternatives to combustible tobacco should be employed to substantially reduce the risk of death and disease of smoking. So what are the better choices? One solution is electronic vaping products or electronic cigarettes that do not involve combustion. Beyond any reasonable doubt, vaping is considerably less harmful than combustible cigarettes. Almost all the harm done by cigarettes arises from the smoke, which is caused by combustion. Vaping does not produce smoke, only vapor. Another alternative to combustible tobacco is what we call the heated tobacco products or HTPs, as reported by the 2018 Global State of Tobacco Harm Reduction. HTPs work on the principle of heating tobacco below the level of combustion. Similar to e-cigarettes, there is no burning, but unlike vapes, nicotine is naturally found in tobacco. By heating the tobacco without burning it, HTPs only produce vapor. Vapor products and HTPs are not completely risk-free, but studies such as those conducted by Akiyama et al. In 2021 and Rodrigo et al. In 2020 show that the use of electronic cigarettes and heated tobacco products could lead to significant reduction in exposure to harmful substances compared to combustible tobacco cigarettes. Allow me to remind everyone, however, that the best way to avoid the harms of cigarette smoking is as simple as quitting completely. Ultimately, to achieve the public health goals of accelerating the decline in smoking prevalence and reducing the harm related to it, harm reduction measures must be mainstream in the regulatory policies of the government alongside public awareness and education. Adult smokers should have the option to switch from smoking to other alternatives that do not involve combustion, such as electronic cigarettes and HTPs. Allowing adult smokers who do not quit to have access to alternative products can actually support current and future regulatory measures against smoking combustible cigarettes. So we envision an effective regulatory framework incorporating harm reduction measures to be differentiated, less restrictive than combustible cigarette regulations, supportive of reasonable accessibility and product communication, while curbing unintended use of non-smokers and minors. Laws should be revisited and carefully calibrated to ensure that adult smokers are made aware of the less harmful alternatives available and given the option to shift to these alternatives while minors and non-smokers are protected. Over-regulating these better alternatives to the point of impossibility of compliance would only perpetuate smoking. Now, on our Philippine experience with the current and pending regulations governing vaporized nicotine products. At present, the Philippines does not have a comprehensive, differentiated, and defined framework for the regulation of vapor products and HTPs. The existing national regulatory regime on tobacco use is inadequate, piecemeal in nature, and does not sufficiently embrace the principles of tobacco harm reduction. In 2019 and 2020, new tax laws such as RA 11346 and Republic Act 11467 were passed into law, which recognized the different classifications of e-cigarettes and HTPs from combustible cigarettes because they do not produce smoke by adopting separate definitions. We have recently witnessed a breakthrough in the global campaign to mitigate the impact of smoking in terms of Philippine legislation. We have a bicameral legislative system in the Philippines. We have the House of the Representatives and the Senate. In the House of Representatives, they already passed House Bill number 9007 or the Non-Combustible Nicotine Delivery System Regulation Act, last May 25, 2021. The bill regulates the manufacture, sale, use, and of less harmful alternatives to cigarettes, such as vapor products and HTPs. It expressly declares as a policy of the state to consider harm reduction measures as a public health strategy by ensuring that non-combustible alternatives to cigarettes are properly regulated. On the other hand, the Senate is currently deliberating their own version of the Vape Bill or Senate Bill 2239, also known as the Vaporized Nicotine Products Regulation Act, We support this bill because Senate Bill 2239, also known as Vaporized Nicotine Products Regulation Act, uh, is a policy of the state to enact a balanced policy whereby these novel consumer products are properly regulated using internationally accepted product standards in order to protect the citizens from the hazards of unregulated and substandard vapor products and heated tobacco products, while ensuring that access to this non-combustible alternative is not curtailed. If the Senate bill is passed, both houses will come up with a consolidated bill for the President's approval. Now, as to the current challenges, obstacles in differentiated and balanced regulation, we're optimistic that public health goals can be achieved with the right support and cooperation from the stakeholders, such as the government, industry, and consumers. But the journey towards acceptance of tobacco harm reduction in the Philippines and a better regulatory framework is no easy feat. Based on media statements, the Department of Health has reiterated its position that electronic cigarettes should be treated and regulated no differently than other tobacco products, and that there is absolutely no acceptable level of harm, especially when Filipinos or lives of Filipinos are put to risk. The Health Secretary publicly stated that the nicotine-containing e-cigarettes and HTPs are harmful products that should be regulated to enforce sensible public health standards and protect the health of the people. The Department of Health has also publicly called for a ban on e-cigarettes. So as regards to the consumer insights, there's a good news when it comes to the attitudes of adult Filipino tobacco and nicotine users. A survey conducted by Acorn Marketing and Research Consultants among 2,000 adult smokers and nicotine users showed that 9 out of 10 smokers and users of smoke-free products want the government to come up with plans to enforce tobacco harm reduction in the country. The poll also revealed that 94% of the respondents agreed that the government should enact policies to encourage adult smokers to switch to less harmful alternatives to cigarettes, while ensuring that the products will not be used by minors. Another key finding is that 70% believe electronic cigarettes and HTPs are better alternatives to cigarettes, and 88% of adult smokers would consider switching to these products. Okay, so then what are the steps for our organization Quit for Good in the Philippines? It's high time that the government re-examine its current tobacco regulations and seriously consider measures promoting the acceptance of smoke-free products in the country. It is only when we provide adult smokers less harmful options that we rightfully shift the balance in favor of the individual for a more inclusive public health policy. So having imparted our views on tobacco harm reduction in the context of the Philippines, we are pleased to share with you the next steps for our organization, Quit for Good. We will continue capacity building for our advocacy group and enticing new members, which are actually steadily on the rise. We will also initiate local research and surveys on smoking and vaping information. We will continue to educate smokers on all available options for quitting via our regular live stream, podcasting, and media forum engagements. We will likewise continue to monitor and advocate the passing of the national bill on e-cigarettes and HTPs into law. In line with this, we urge the government consider the best possible differentiated legal framework to careful review of the science and evidence presented on the matter and defend the right of the consumers to make better choices for themselves. This concludes my talk. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So let's be informed, stay informed, and help improve lives.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Lorenzo. We will go ahead with the next presenter. Can I invite from maybe Prof. Hiroya?
Good afternoon, everyone, the panelists and the audience throughout the world. I'm so happy to have a chance to talk about the Japanese situation of heated tobacco products. Let me start right away. Like in many other countries throughout the world, the smoking is the biggest cause of death or this serious diseases. And the data I'm showing here is a little bit old of year 2007, but less than a million deaths of this year. 130,000 deaths are caused by smoking, followed by hypertension or diabetes or alcoholism or whatever. So this is a big issue, as many other countries. And following this trend, it is still growing after year 2007, as you can see in the year 2010. And I found out the report in the Lancet recently that this number has still increasing in Japan as well. And for the smoking rate, if we're talking about Japan's case, we were kind of retarded in the past, let's say 30 years ago compared to the Western countries, but we are catching up these days and reducing the smoking rate quite a bit, and the average is 18% right now. I mean, the recent data. And if you see the economic impact of the smoking, there is some positive effect due to the tax income. If you see this one in the year 2005, 2.8 trillion yen. But if you see the negative part of the economic impact of smoking itself, it's much bigger than the income, as you can see here. And I have been involved with the smoking cessation program clinically until actually 8 years ago, for 5 years, because I was head of the small clinic in Tokyo. And I tried so hard to make the smokers to stop smoking. And this program, 5 times, doctor visit, and for 3 months, I had a good result of continuation rate, better than the national, average. This one is 47%, but in my clinic was 60%. But in 1 year, the result became awful. Like, the half of the smokers who stopped smoking started smoking again just in 1 year. So it's so sad and disappointed. But around that time, the heated tobacco product has been launched in Japan, IQOS by Philip Morris International, Glow and British American Tobacco, and Plume Tech and Japan Tobacco Company. And this has a very interesting impact in Japanese smoking, situation. And if you see that this is a quite recent data over year 2019, and switching rate for smoking, the left side graph is the male, average, and the female average on the right side. For the male, it's 27%, and for female, 25% of the smoker has been switched to the heated tobacco products from the cigarette smoking, which is really supposed to be good. And if you are thinking about, if the companies say that it's a safer product as, cigarette compared to cigarette, you may worried about the increase of smoking rate, but it's still reducing. If you can see, compared to the one I showed in the year 2016, in 3 years it's still reducing. So average is 16% the smoking rate. And if you see the sales of cigarette itself, it's quite interesting, because this, you can see the black line, these consumption of cigarettes is still reducing. But because of the launch of this 3 heated tobacco product, the consumption of the cigarette is reducing this way, as you can see in the red line, and which has been a very interesting phenomenon. And I was asked many, people from abroad, why is this happening? But this could be a good trend if you can see the thinking about harm reduction. But some of the people are worried about isn't any intended use, like dual usage with cigarettes, or intention of initiation of non-smokers, or relapse or reinitiation of ex-smokers. And the younger generation may start, smoking. And when they say the companies are telling that toxins of the smoke is reduced in the heated tobacco product, is the data reliable or not? And talking about the dual use, there has been a survey of men and women, and it's been only that 20% of the smoker, those who are using both cigarettes and heated tobacco products. And the reinitiation was also, according to the survey, very few, even for the those who haven't ever smoked using IQOS is very few, as you can see in the right side. And the reinitiation is also very few, like less than 1% of smokers reinitiated smoking. And as what they call a gateway effect for the younger generation to start smoking because of this, harm reduction products. There has been a survey by Dr. Osaki of Tottori University, supported by the government, and he did a survey for junior high school and high school students of 64,000, a sample, and there has been no increase of even normal cigarettes or heated tobacco, and you can have some e-cigarettes in Japan, if you import it privately, and there's no increase of these products because of this. And for the data reliability, you may worried about, or you can be suspicious about it, but there's a third-party analysis of the data of toxicity, toxins contained in the heated tobacco product has been proved to be almost the same that with the data of tobacco company have revealing. So these data are reliable as well. And there's a specific characteristic of regulation in Japan, because the normal tobacco cigarettes are controlled by the Ministry of Finance, mainly because of the tax related problems. But if you try to produce more, though I would say less harmful products like e-cigarettes, vapor type of stuff, they would think it's the part of the drug, because vapor is a nicotine solved in the water or whatever, liquid. So if we try to launch the e-cigarettes in Japan, you have to deal with Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, which has a more strict regulations to control these materials. So 3 major companies are reluctant to launch the vapor type of product these days. However, there has been an environmental change in Japan, partly because we were supposed to have the Tokyo Olympic last year, which has been postponed this year because of COVID. But there has been a difference of differentiating the tobacco, let's say heated tobacco products to the cigarette smoking. You can use heated tobacco in this restaurant, but not the cigarettes, like you can see in the less one. So there's a differentiation by the government as well. So as a conclusion, ever since the 2014, the 3 heated tobacco products has been launched, and this is dominating the tobacco smokers' habit. And in 4 years, tobacco sale has been decreasing quite a bit because of this. And many people ask me why, and probably partly because e-cigarettes are not launched or admitted in Japan, and heated tobacco products is the only thing we can have as a harmless stuff. And Japanese people are very worried about the social courtesy of awareness, like passive smoking or many ashes or risk of children's burn due to the cigarettes. And many Japanese health conscious. As you can see, we are checking the health almost every year, supported by the office. And the other thing is also Tokyo Olympic, which has been postponed this year, but the Tokyo metropolitan government are trying so hard to make the Tokyo area smokeless. So as I showed, the HTPs are not causing initiation or gateway phenomenon in younger generation in Japan, and don't attract the former new never smokers. And heated tobacco products can be the alternative to cigarette by contributing the harm reduction of smoking to those who cannot quit smoking, and yet possibly it could be the step toward smoking cessation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Hiroya. Can I just ask a small short question? Do you think COVID has an impact on the smoking practice in Japanese?
That's what I've been, interested in quite a bit. So I asked 3 major tobacco companies if they can get any data or clinical, information. If you are using the heated tobacco products, you have less chance of getting serious COVID, sickness. But they haven't obtained that kind of data yet. But probably medical society may be interested in this kind of area in the future, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hiroya. Thank you so much. So the next presenter, can I invite Dr. Bimo? Do you have any slides, Dr. Bimo? Yeah, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, greeting from Jakarta, Indonesia. Thank you. I will share the Indonesian experience in tobacco harm reduction, especially about the challenges and opportunities. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the chairman of Indonesian Tar Coalition, Tar Free Coalition, or KABAR. So we are a combination of organization, academician, scientists, health professional who are committed in providing education and increasing public awareness of health problems, especially those related to dangers of tar. And then we also has helped the government of Indonesia with the Indonesian national standard, especially for heated tobacco products. So we have already the national standard for heated tobacco product. We do direct advocacy with the government in Indonesia, and then FGD public discussion to ensure the participation of public, and then also invoke media advocacy. So, okay, this slide is, I think we have been aware, and then other countries in Asia also. Dr. Lorenzo also has shared the experience of the Philippines and in Japan that we face the problem of smoking. Indonesian is not excluded from that problem. We have 65 million smokers, active smokers, and more than 90 million people are considered as the passive smokers in Indonesia. And then what? The prevailing, the prevalence of smoking over the age is continue to raise, never reduce. And then we have 65% men smoking in Indonesia, and while women is a bit low number, but increasing over the time. And but yet we don't have yet the correct method to to even reduce or how to eliminate such problem. Okay. So the existence of the full tobacco product, now namely other tobacco processing product, we call it HPTL, as such as electronic cigarette and heated tobacco. We we have already taxed it, but we don't have the regulation for that yet. Yeah, that's what we are carrying out, or we struggle to have now. Okay. Right now, the tobacco control policy in Indonesia is just like this. I mean, if we see the left side is the advocacy, collaboration, and then everything, but we should read it from the middle. So the middle tax and excise is the most non-compromising measure from the tobacco control policy in Indonesia, and then we go up and down to as a uh, uh, complementary measure. So we hope that tobacco harm reduction could be move up to be one of the strongest complementary measure, but not yet. We are in the middle of the struggling for that. So the smoking cessation, mainly we know that there are people who are willing to quit and unwilling to quit. So we put 5A for who are willing to quit. So ask, advise, assess, and assist and arrange. And for those who are unwilling to quit, we put the 5R: relevance, risk, reward, roadblocks, repetition. So that's the the overall tobacco policies in Indonesia. Now, this is the picture that on the left side we see that we have a ban on tobacco advertising and promotion, age restriction, and education, and no smoking area, especially around the schools and public religious place. Yeah, but for the alternative tobacco, we are now in the process to have regulation for age restriction and harm reduction concept in the as a umbrella concept, and then the goal and target for active adult smokers, those 65 million people. So because right now the government is focusing only on the new smokers. How about the existing smokers? That's what the target of alternative tobacco product. And okay, the current issues. Tobacco harm reduction is applied for alternative tobacco product or called other tobacco processing product that includes electronic cigarette, heated tobacco product, and snus. Adult smokers switch to alternative tobacco product to seek less harmful product for quit smoking or switching only. We have already convention for all people that 18 is the threshold of the age. Yeah. So legal age of tobacco or OTP use is 18 years old. Now, this is the problem we have here. ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery system, and heated tobacco are still considered as a tobacco product under Indonesian law. So this is a frame that provided by some Indonesian activists for anti-tobacco activists. So the electronic cigarette and the cigarette is the same thing. That's what we want to make clear. Yeah, I mean, this is not right because it's not scientifically based. Okay, The success rate of smoker who quit by choosing alternative tobacco product is higher compared to smoker who quit smoking using NRT and others. The prohibitionist, we're talking now the concept, yeah? The prohibitionist tobacco control group reject the tobacco harm reduction and support the stricter tobacco control policy. So we have a different paradigm here in Indonesia. One is the prohibitionist with the zero risk and everything, and the other is reductionist with focusing on less risk and focusing on the risk itself. I mean, because we want to solve problem, we want to solve the existing problem without waiting, because we have been using the same method, business as usual, for decades, and it's not working. Okay, and so we propose to separate regulation between the we call it conventional tobacco and the novel tobacco products. Yeah, okay. And we also propose the participatory research, yeah, and collaborative, of course, independent also, involving government, academician, researcher, media, and consumer to develop tobacco harm reduction concept. We also endorse the fiscal incentive for those who are develop research for and innovation for novel tobacco products, and we endorse the openness for public information and participation, because most of the time scientists talk, government talk, and then they frame everything. They put the stigma for smoker and did not consider their rights, the human rights. So what we have proposed here, the principle of harm reduction is based on scientific evidence, social justice, human right, and the avoidance of stigma and openness of information. So now we have the SNI, the Standard National Product. We need the information to be accurate and age restriction and licensed product and other supervised practice. So this is the main thinking of this presentation. The challenges is the resistance and lack of understanding about tobacco harm reduction, and then the paradigm of zero risk versus less risk. Yeah? This caused the limited studies and research on tobacco harm reduction. So the universities are somehow banned or limited to do tobacco-related research. Understanding mindset and capability of stakeholder, and especially the government, regarding the concept of harm reduction in formulating policies based on harm reduction, tobacco harm reduction. So what the opportunities we have is encouraging the government to support studies and research, and then scientific-based studies and research on tobacco harm reduction can be used as part of the health transformation to deal with smoking epidemic and COVID-19 pandemic. So, and tobacco harm reduction studies and research can support effort to reduce smoking risk for non-communicable diseases and other public health problems. Okay, I think
thank you.
That's the main.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bimu. Because of time restriction, may I straight away invite Prof. Asrul from Malaysia to present your slides, if you have any slides, or are you just going to talk, Prof. Asrul?
I'm going to do both, share my slides and also talk, if it's okay.
All right,
with you.
thank you. Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
Please introduce yourself. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Prof. Sharifa. Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone, at least those from Malaysia or the same time zone. So I'm feel so happy to be here. This is actually my first Asian Tobacco Harm Reduction Summit. I'm happy actually because even though with all this COVID-19 pandemic that we have, we still, and organizers still advocating these harm reduction, tobacco harm reductions, without being distracted by this COVID-19 pandemic. So we know this COVID-19 is here, the pandemic is here, and smoking doesn't stop even though COVID-19 is here. Perhaps maybe increase because of the lockdown or quarantine. My name is Asrul. I'm a professor in the University of Science Malaysia and also a member of the Malaysian Society of Harm Reductions. So this society is a newly established society, and we advocate a lot of activity on harm reductions in Malaysia. So I understand that I'm only given 10 minutes, okay, with that specified 8 slides to discuss all these major points. So I put that and keep that in mind when I'm preparing my slides and also my talk. And I believe that I can guarantee I can meet this in time. Just briefly on the tobacco control strategy in Malaysia. So I think when I see other countries' presentation just now, I actually felt that more or less we do have a similar history of controlling tobacco in Malaysia. So we began in 2004 when I think prior to that, we always see the tobacco advertisement, a Lucky Strike advertisement, a Marlboro advertisement at any sports events in Malaysia. But in beginning in 2004, there is a control of tobacco regulations that ban advertising, sponsorships, and also free tobacco. 2005, we actually rectify the WHO framework for control of tobacco. And from then, Malaysia became the party to this WHO and quite consistently pursue all this agenda of this WHO framework. So in 2007, they introduced the excise tax duty where it increased by 25%. And from then on, there is some regulations amended. 2009, they have this. They noted that even though increase of tax duty, but there are some tobacco company that still have promotions or perhaps selling it in a loose pack. So which is why in 2009 and 2010, there is amendment to this how tobacco is being sold in Malaysia, where they introduce a minimum price for cigarettes and there shouldn't be a promotion price and also no kiddie pack. In 2011, there is a serious movement towards a smoke-free legislation. So a number of places in Malaysia has been gazetted as a smoke-free, especially in air-conditioned place. So I think almost all these public institutions, organizations, and private institutions have actually been gazetted as a smoke-free place, except for a few, for example, like a pub, bar, karaoke place. So those are not under the same, those are not legislated as the smoke-free environment, smoke-free place. So a few states in Malaysia, we have 14 states. So a few states have initiated a smoke-free initiative. For example, like Malacca, Penang, who actually established themselves and gazetted a smoke-free state. It means that even in public place, people shouldn't smoke. So if caught for smoking, so there is a fine of up to 20,000 or 2 years of imprisonment. So from then on, there are some amendments to actually include more and more states who to be smoke-free. Okay, so that's a brief history of the control strategy in Malaysia. So how successful are we then? So the control strategy in Malaysia is always based on controlling the number of people who smoke. Perhaps what we want to see is there should be a reductions in the number of smokers in Malaysia. And that's what we actually see in Malaysia, okay? From year 2000, so there's about a third of Malaysian, 29% are smokers. And this has reduced to about 21% in 2020, which is actually quite a marked reduction, about 10% of reductions in terms of prevalence of smokers. But we all know that reducing smokers is not the end point of the game. The reason why we want to reduce smokers is not only because that we don't want people to smoke, but most importantly is because we realize the health impact of smoking. So we want people to stop smoking because we want to make sure that there is an improvement in health. There are a number of diseases where the major risk factors are smokers. So we want people to stop smoking so that then we can reduce this major illness. So the end game that we want is actually not only that people reduce in smoking, but we also want the disease as a whole to be controlled and reduced as well. So, but what we see, okay, a number of diseases, okay, which is related to smoking, okay, where smoking is one of the major risk factors, increasing. Okay, so these are the top 5 principal cause of death in Malaysia. So we see the trend for the past 5 years from 2015: ischemic heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, malignant neoplasm of trachea, bronchus, and lung. So these 3, so the major risk factors are smoking. And then their numbers are increasing over the years, over the past 5 years. Okay, which actually shows that perhaps we managed to control the number of people who smoke, okay, but we are perhaps not that successful in controlling the consequence or the disease related to smoking. So, but we also understood that there can be many other factors that contribute to this disease. But it also shows that to us that perhaps the strategy that we are pursuing might not give us enough power to achieve our end game. There are a number of challenges to the tobacco control in Malaysia. So even though it was nice on paper that we have these smoke-free legislations, that we have these advocacy programs, stop smoking, say no to smoke every year. And we also have about more than 300 quit smoking clinics throughout the countries, okay? But we noted that we are still unable to control either reducing the number of people who smoke to 0 or the total impact of smoking. People still smoke, so most probably and most likely it's the poor enforcement of failure. So the law is there, but it usually good enough when it was launched. Okay? So after a few months it was launched, the enforcement no longer loiter around the retails, so people resume to smoke. Even some enforcement agency were caught to be smoking as well in this place. There is also this problem of controlling the availability of cigarettes, especially to teenagers. So even though they no longer sell it as a kiddie pack in retail, but there are always a problem with loose pack being sold in unofficial outlet. And also the availability of cheap and smuggled cigarettes. Because we have quite a long border and with limited enforcement agencies to enforce the border control. So we do have a problem having these cheap smuggled cigarettes, which actually can be sold much cheaper and without much sales regulation as what we had for official cigarettes in Malaysia. So, and even though we have this quit smoking clinic, okay, which in principle, they use counseling and also NRT, the nicotine replacement therapy, but the success rate is as low as 17.3% to 51.3%, depending on the clinic. But this is worrying as well. Okay, some of them are actually resume to smoke, and which actually give a challenge to this quit smoking clinic and also tobacco control in general in Malaysia. So, so what we have in Malaysia now, I think I heard from Indonesia as well. The focus is always on the non-smoker, smoker, trying to reduce people who didn't smoke to become smoker, which is good, and trying to make sure that people who smoke to also quit and become non-smoker. Okay. And they realize that there is a link between smoker and smoking complications, but okay, but the link is not realized in terms of policy, in terms of the way that the authority look into harm reduction programs that actually do not seek to actually compete with tobacco control, but actually looking at the different path of reducing smoking complications, which is the end game in these issues, and trying to make sure that people actually, I mean, those who are unable to completely stop smoking, to actually be able to reduce their complications by having a non-combustible cigarette alternative. The general consensus, the general feeling that we had from the public authority in Malaysia is that they're totally against these tobacco harm reductions for many reasons. I think many years ago, it was because of religious arguments, and they actually banned all outlets from selling these. And then it's slowly coming up again, but then there are some talk about trying to restrict that it being sold only in a pharmacy, but still just talk, and people are still being nervous of what new regulations are going to be introduced by the country for these non-combustible cigarettes, which actually provide a good alternative for tobacco harm reductions. So with that, I think I close to the time now. I thank you for the opportunity to Prof. Sharifa for chairing, and thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Prof. Asrul. I think that was excellent. I just have one question. Maybe do you think the nicotine replacement therapy should be continued at this point in time?
It should be continued, but we shouldn't stop other alternatives being considered in the treatment of patients.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Prof. Hiroya, do you have anything that you might want to inquire from Prof. Asrul?
I was kind of amazed that you know, some country in the world has the problem of the smuggled, you know, cigarettes is always existing, and because of that, you cannot control the you know, smoking program. So I think it seems to be the same in Indonesia. And Japan is an island country, so that could be avoided in a way.
That's true as well. A very good point. I think we are, I think probably with, if Indonesia is here, okay, Dr. Bimo has left. I think we are one of the biggest countries with issues of smuggling, Dr. Hiroya. With that, the consumer or the population are able to choose whether you want to buy smuggled tobacco or real legit tobacco, and most of them would choose smuggled tobacco because of it's cheaper and also it's more accessible. Only during COVID that we found out that some of these smuggled tobacco are not able to be bought in because of the COVID, and there's increased enforcement. So the price of the smuggled tobacco actually increased, similar to the legit tobacco. So then they start to buy either or. So okay. So thank you very much to our panelists, Prof. Asrul, Dr. Hiroya. I think Dr. Bimo was here just now, Prof. Rajesh, and also Dr. Lorenzo has to leave because he has patients in his clinic. Thank you very much. I think all of us has alluded a lot of examples of how difficult our Asian countries are, in tackling tobacco control in our own settings. I think Prof. Rajesh showed that most of the tobacco burden or combustible tobacco burden are mostly in the low middle income countries, and hence this is why we are here. So we see that different countries face different problems, and the way the enforcements are being opposed are also different. I think Japan has a very good controls where even ants did not make it into their shore, compared with Malaysia, where we do not have control at this point in time, Dr. Hiroya. They are able to bring in vape in certain different concentration and things like that, but the enforcement is not so strong yet. Even though the control for tobacco the control for nicotine in the e-juice are still available, is there, but the enforcement process and regulators are not very well established. So in that sense, we see different countries face different issues. And this is one of the reasons that why Asian is also some of the low middle income countries are facing a lot of this burden in our areas or in our continents as well. So is there anything that Prof. Asrul or Dr. Hiroya wants to add? If not, yes, please go ahead.
Okay,
no, I'm just thinking about so please go ahead.
Okay, well, I think I agree actually, Prof. Sharifa. I think the public health authorities, I mean, they should have a good balance between the regulations, the incentive, and also the policy that they are drafting. So perhaps they have good intentions by increasing the tax duty or banning here, regulating this and that. But we do need to understand that human behavior, I mean, if you do have a choice of going on with it, and then if you have an alternative that you can channel to obtain it, then they will. Okay, so in this case of cigarette, for example, okay, so the things is that if you regulate it too tight, so it will drive it underground, and people will choose illegal way to obtain the cigarette, which is perhaps with unregulated nicotine content and packaging, which defeat all the purpose that we had. And so I think a new approach should be taken there.
Sorry, thank you, Prof. Asrul. Please go ahead, Dr. Hiroya.
Yes,
Last comment.
problem I am having in Japan is that, probably the regulatory authority may be thinking about, accepting the concept of the harm reduction in a way, but in the medical society of Japan, we are having big problem to make them understand the concept of harm reduction. And I actually start to learn about this idea, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, which was a very interesting way of thinking, I thought. But many Japanese medical society authorities are rejecting to accept this concept. So some of them are thinking just the nicotine itself is a big toxin. So even you try to reduce the toxicity or tar of combusted tobacco, you will still have some kind of harm, even for the vapor. But I don't know how to make them understand the concept of harm reduction. It should be better than nothing, but we're still struggling.
Thank you, Dr. Hiroya. I think we are all in the same boat and we are facing all of this in our own countries as well. So you are not alone, Dr. Hiroya. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are all in the same boat as well, and we have similar difficulties as well. And we have different medical colleagues telling us that what are you doing? You know, this is wrong and things like that. So we are facing the same problems as well. All right. Okay. So thank you very much. I think our 1 hour plus is up. Thank you very much to all panelists, and thank you for your disclosure on the matter. I think I conclude this session, and I think I will pass this back to our technician. Thank you very much. Have a safe evening.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.